This is quite an honor for me to be able to introduce, can you hear me? Our speaker this evening. Clay Henderson graduated from Stetson University in 1977 with a major in history. For those of you who do not know, Stetson is located in DeLand, Florida. And DeLand was the mentor to Venice when we were going to apply to be a Florida Main Street city in 1987. Clay is senior counsel at the national law firm of Holland and Knight, where he has been for the last 15 years. He's the former president of Audubon, Florida, and was elected for 2 terms to the Volusia County Commission. Currently, Clay is director, and I hope I get this right, this is a mouthful, Institute for Water and Environmental Resilience at Stetson University. He's also current president of the Historic Trust for Historic Preservation. He lives in New Smyrna, where after law school, he worked very closely with the city fathers to get a historic program approved. This is how, in his words, he morphed into the environmental world to help tweak conservation and preservation, because you are using a lot of the same tools, unquote. Excuse me. I should also tell you that Clay is a 6th generation Floridian. In 2012, he received the George and Mary Hood Award from the president of Stetson University. The president stated that the award came from his devotion to Stetson and its core values. 2 of these core values are good stewardship and environmental responsibility. At that time, Clay was applauded for negotiation for the conservation of more than 300,000 acres of land in Florida for national parks and preserves. One of the staff members of the Audubon, Florida stated, Clay knows how to bring people together. He always has his eye on the object of protecting the places that make Florida special. Tonight, Clay is here to speak to us about the economic value of historic preservation, which quite often is overlooked. He has stated that communities that have embraced historic preservation become very proud of their efforts as they see those efforts as opportunity for economic growth, but also as a way of making their communities different from any other community. Therefore, without further ado, I would like you to give Clay Henderson, a 6th generation Floridian, a warm Venice welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I have a feeling I've got to give this back to you, and then let me steal this. Here we go. We're good. All right. Thank you. Betty, that was wonderful. Did I write that? I can't remember. That was really good, and it was heartfelt, and appreciate it. And I know we had a nice reception earlier down the road in Sarasota, and I was reminded that we do an annual award program every year for the heroes of historic preservation around the state of Florida, and we honored Betty last year for her efforts in this community. She's one of your historic preservation leaders in this county, and thank you for all you do. And it's nice to be here. It's been fun driving around Sarasota County today. I got to tell you, every time I come by here, and in fact, we drove past Oscar Scherer Park on the way down here, I have one of those flashbacks. Because years ago, when I was working on the Nature Conservancy and doing Preservation 2000 projects, we came here to look at some additions to that state park, and we're going out through the wet prairie out there. We came to a gate, and I said, "Oh, I'll get it." And they handed me the key, and I jumped out of the truck onto, not the ground, not the swamp. I jumped on the back of a 7-foot alligator. So every time I come to Sarasota County, I just feel like I'm riding the back of an alligator somewhere. So hopefully you'll be, obviously we live to tell about it. Oh, that was really good. And so, but I can't drive through Sarasota County without having that kind of a memory. Good to see everybody here. This is great. This is the Hysterical Society meeting. Everybody knew that. But it's exciting to see people interested in historic preservation. I heard you. How many people were here for Victor Dover? Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? This is good. This is good. This shows commitment to this kind of a program. I will tell you that I was telling Carolyn, I got volunteered for this. Now, you'll hear me tonight. Next week, is it next week you're going to hear from Ed Childs? And those of you know, Ed was Lawton Childs' son. I walked with Lawton when I was a teenager, when he was first running for U.S. Senate. I could never say no, to Lawton. And then Bruce Stevenson, you'll hear from at the end. Bruce, I first started as an adjunct before I went to Stetson. I started at Rollins. Bruce recruited me to there. I cannot say no to Rollins, or could not ever say no to Bruce. So you're hearing two people that I can't say no to. But the interesting thing about this, I learned about my commitment to you tonight, not from any of them, but from one of my fishing buddies. Usually I go out to Montana every July to go trout fishing with my fly fishing guru of 20 years. And he calls me and says, "Oh, I hear that you're going to give us a program in Sarasota County next year." I said, "No, I don't know anything about it." "Oh, yeah, you're going to do it." "Well, how is it that you know I'm going to do it?" "Well, my new next door neighbor in Montana is Ed Childs. And he's told me you're going to do it, so I guess you're going to do it." So that's how I learned that I'm going to be with you here tonight. So I'm the weak part, I'm the weak link in this chain. You're going to hear from three other really, really good and dynamic people. And tonight we're going to talk about historic preservation and economics, and hopefully that doesn't bore too many people. But as Betty said, it's really about the intangibles, the value of this in terms of the authenticity of your community. These intangibles are priceless, as they say. As Betty said, one of the hats that I wear is that for this year I'm the president or board chair of the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation. We're a group that's been around for about 35 years. The Historic Preservation Act's been around for 50 years. We're very much involved in advocacy, educational outreach, and stewardship on behalf of historic preservation. I think I saw Lori Murdowney in the back. Lori, raise your hand. I hope everybody knows Lori. She's been involved in historic preservation in Sarasota County for many, many years, and she also serves as a trustee of our organization. We're based in Tallahassee. It's a Queen Anne house that we're part of. We really got founded around protecting the Florida Capitol. As Florida was growing and we wanted to be modern and get rid of the old, the idea was to bulldoze this beautiful old Capitol. The original part was built in 1845. And so that was the first spurrings of historic preservation in Florida, coming forth to save this important icon. We're missing, I don't know where that came from. But this is what we're about, and the beautiful state capitol is one of the things we're very proud that we have protected. Some of the things that we do, as I mentioned, as with Betty, we honor our conservation or preservation heroes from around the state with an awards conference. We hold an annual conference. We held it in Sarasota County back in 2007, so a lot of us were familiar with some of the great things that you've done in this community. Last year, of all places, we were in Miami. I mean, Miami actually does have some really exciting things that have taken place there in terms of historic preservation. And we also have stewardship. We own an incredible building in Fort Lauderdale, Bonnet House, so we own our own structure. We hold conservation easements or preservation easements for preservation-minded landowners. So we are an important tool of conservation. So that is what we do. You heard I'm a sixth-generation Floridian, but it is kind of part of who I am. But I will tell you that because I live in New Smyrna, we'll talk about it in a minute, you know, some of the folks there think of me as a Johnny-come-lately because I'm only a sixth-generation Floridian. My daughter's best friend is a 12th-generation Floridian. But every once in a while, I like to go check on the old homestead. This is the log cabin that my grandmother was born in. I mean, that sounds like ancient. Of course, I am ancient, but think about that. My grandmother was born in this log cabin. I took this picture last year, and her grandfather built this log cabin in 1840. Now, I don't think they had plastic rockers back then. And I think this is clearly a new roof. What do you think? And the electrical stuff, that's new, but they've got a riding lawnmower. I don't have one of those, so that's just, they're very good. But as a child, I remember my grandmother taking me here and saying, this is part of your heritage. This is where I was born. This is the house that my grandfather built. And then one of the cool things for me, you know, in terms of my public service, is that her grandfather had served as one of the members of the Constitution Convention that founded this state. And then 150 years later, I had a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to also serve on a Constitution Revision Commission for Florida and do this, be part of, in effect, you know, this lineage of service back to the state. But all this is about connections. You know, it's about connections. Sort of my first few years were in the state capitol. My dad worked for the Attorney General's office. I got to play in the old Capitol. Back then, the cupola, this rose window wasn't there. It was before air conditioning. They had a big old attic fan up there. And we used to go, I knew the way back up there was a cool place to play. And we saw this broken glass, you know, around. I remember that from a child. And it's when they restored that and took the fan down and found the old pictures, they were able to restore this incredible glass in the rotunda of the Capitol, making it just truly a very special place. As I said, as a kid, I grew up in New Smyrna. This is just down the street from me. This is the ruins of, we call it the old fort. It is old, but it's not really a fort. But New Smyrna was one of the colonial cities, and it's just nice to have that kind of degree of history all about you. You know, I tell people that I really haven't ventured very far in life because I've lived almost all of my life within a 2-mile circle. And that's in the 2-mile circle, and most of the historic district of New Smyrna is in that circle, and so it's very much part of me. And as Betty said, I wandered all the way over to DeLand to go to school, and now it's where I work, and it's a wonderful place to be in a spot, the oldest educational institution in Florida, 19th century buildings. Of course, they have air conditioning now. The students today, they're spoiled. We didn't have air conditioning. So, but to be part of these buildings that were built in the 1870s and 1880s is very, very special. It's great to see Stetson's commitment to it. And then, interestingly, I started practicing law in DeLand. We're going to come back, it's a theme here, DeLand and New Smyrna. So the courthouse that's the center of our town, it was built in the 20s. The courtroom there is so cool and so old. Every couple of years, you know, they do To Kill a Mockingbird, you know, the play in the courtroom. I tried a few years ago, I tried a case in there that lasted 6 weeks. I felt like I could commune with all the old spirits and lawyers and judges that had been hanging around there for all those years. And then the best part about it, and I'll just again segue into what we're talking about, you know, I've had some wonderful experiences with historic preservation and practice of law. Being part of H&K, Holland and Knight, was every conservation easement in the country that they dealt with, I got a chance to review. And so I looked at lots of National Register districts. I worked in some great old Civil War sites in Virginia, Also worked on some Civil War sites in Florida and in Jacksonville, and my own community. And then one of the coolest things I got to do, we were actually given the job of reviewing the Empire State Building. You know, it's a historic site. It's from the 30s, and to go in and to do a sustainability review, and that was pretty cool. But then the one cool thing I love to tell people is because it's unusual. I did get to work on a historic easement for something unusual, a building in Washington, D.C. that is historic, but it is less than 50 years old. You know, anybody ever heard of the Watergate? And what's interesting is that the National Trust for Historic Preservation, now their offices are now in the Watergate. I don't know what that means, but it's kind of fun to do. So I guess some of y'all saw the interview that Jim did with me that maybe some got you here. The first question, was, well, some people just don't think Florida is historic. And Florida is just dripping with history. We have such an incredible and rich history in this state, and it is part of the timeless quality that we have. This is the Castillo de San Marcos in St. Augustine. St. Augustine, as we know, the oldest European city in what is now the United States. And I'm sorry, John Nolen, but there is a city in Florida that has a plan that is older than Venice, okay? Actually, I teach this in my planning class. It is called King Philip's Law of the Indies. The King of Spain in the 16th century actually set forth all the requirements for every one of the colonial cities of the New World, and St. Augustine was laid out as part of that plan. But if you go to Havana or Antigua, Guatemala, or Asuncion, Paraguay, or even Santiago, Chile, you'll see the same plan. It's all the same plan. The Plaza de Marcos in the center, the plaza surrounded by the church, the cathedral, the government house, and the linear streets that go back out. Not quite the design you have here in Venice, but this has pretty much stood the test of time anywhere, and you can go to any of these cities like Santo Domingo and you can see the exact same plan. So quite a history. Pensacola, now I don't know if you caught the news, it may not have made it this far south, but they dug up some relics here recently that they say proves that Pensacola was actually founded before St. Augustine, about 6 years before in 1559, and they're going to take credit for it. But it is an historic city, and it very much has its own sense of place. Most people would never know or think that this was the largest city in Florida until the 1880s. Okay, pirates all over Key West, and but it's in its own way, it's a beautiful place. So many things have been preserved. It's part of the character and charm of the city. Just up the road here, the Ybor City is National Historic District that is in Tampa, in Ybor City. We had our conference there a couple of years ago. We were all just amazed at what's happened in Ybor City, where you not only have the old, the cigar factories that have been preserved, but in adaptive use, where they're doing so many different things for it. It's really part of the exciting lifeblood of Tampa now. And in Miami, I talked about this. I couldn't resist that picture. That's from last year's conference. But it is a blend of the old and the new. And there really are some exciting things that are happening in Miami, and we got to share that vision. And what you share with Coral Gables is also a municipal plan, a city plan. It's really had the test of time. Palm Beach. Palm Beach is also a planned community, I guess planned by Mr. Flagler and architect by Mr. Meisner, but some incredible, incredible buildings there, including, I guess, the one on the left here is owned by Mr. Trump, but it was built by Marjorie Merriweather Post, who at the time was the richest woman in America. And it's quite a showplace. Mr. Flagler's house down at the bottom, there's some extraordinary architecture there. And surely Palm Beach is one of a kind, but it has this timeless quality about it. So why should we care? I think, you live here, you're interested, you come out tonight, you care, you understand there is this timelessness about it, this authenticity that goes with historic preservation is what makes your community different. It fosters all kinds of civic pride that you carry with you. You're different from other places. It adds intrinsic value to all of your property because it's a destination, it's a place that is very different. One of the other reasons why we should care is because when it's gone, it's gone. And we suffered through this last year. I don't know if any of you ever had a chance to see the Bellevue Biltmore. I actually stayed there. Think about it. I can't think of any other place, maybe in America, but certainly in Florida, a hotel where both Barack Obama and Thomas Edison stayed. Okay? I mean, think about that span of history. And it came down just like that. The city commission turned on a dime. They decided that their historic preservation ordinance, they needed to appoint people to their historic preservation commission that would not do the right thing. They ignored their comprehensive plan, and they allowed this to be turned over to condo developers who are going to replace this timeless, priceless piece of history with condos that I guarantee you will look like just every other condo in the state of Florida. So when it's gone, it's gone. So we're going to talk a little bit about economics. I promise not to bore you a lot with it because we're really interested in intrinsic values. But you can break this down. And there have been a lot of studies, or a lot of studies ongoing. This is one that was done for the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation. And the metrics are very easy to see. You can see this in terms of jobs produced, property values of the community, the effects of heritage tourism. People want to come and see your community. Environmental measurements such as sustainability. Restoration of a historic building is far more sustainable than building something anew. And then the intangibles of your downtown revitalization. All these things can be documented. A few years ago, we did a state report, and this one, we expect to have updated in the next few years. But these were numbers that they've been updated in 2010, so that's coming out of the recession. But looking back, some pretty strong numbers in terms of the billions of dollars of economic impact. $4 billion for heritage tourism, $2 billion for rehab, almost $100 million for museums, and $4 million for the Main Street program. These are strong numbers by anyone's imagination, and they're part of the economic drivers of successful communities. This is numbers from just before the recession that show the several billion-dollar, $6.3 billion contribution of historic preservation to the economy of Florida. And that is jobs. That's jobs. That it really is economic development. And here's a driver. When you add up the rehabilitation issues, heritage tourism, all of those aspects, the state documented over 100,000 jobs in the state associated with this overall industry, I'll call it that, of historic preservation. So that's not something that you can ignore. And when you step back and look at this on a national scale, you see how important it is. In Florida, about $2 billion were spent on restoration. But when you look back nationally, it is truly one of the biggest drivers across the nation. The National Tax Credit or Historic Preservation Tax Credit Incentive Program is the best tool that there is in this country for reinvestment, and $55 billion is no number to sneeze at. That's significant indeed. The tax benefits, if you are on the National Register or a property that contributes to a National Register district, you can take the benefits of the tax credit for costs associated with the rehabilitation. There is also a tax deduction for the conservation or preservation easement that goes with the preservation of the building. So that's very significant. If you are trying to move forward to do a rehabilitation on the building, these are very important things to reduce reduce the costs up front and contribute to the bottom line of the project. In Florida, we have added a few other dimensions to this, and I think one of the things I'm sort of personally proud of is that, I actually helped put the words historic preservation into the Florida Constitution. It was about time. Somebody should have done it, so we got that done. So you can receive a significant credit against your ad valorem tax as a result of putting an easement over a historic property if you're in a municipality that has actually approved this program. And I just don't know, has Venice accepted this program or not? Do we know? We need to look into that. Because I can tell you that in Palm Beach, where I probably did this last, there are millions of dollars that have been, or people have been benefited in terms of billions of dollars because of this exemption. Now, as Betty said, Venice is one of Florida's Main Street communities. There are now over 40, I believe, and the Main Street program has probably been the singular most important or successful program in terms of local preservation that we've had in Florida, because it does so many different things. It builds a positive image for the community. It creates jobs. It helps small businesses. It really gives our small businesses on our Main Street in the center of town a competitive advantage against the big boxes that are out there on the stores. People want to go to the stores on Main Street. They want to be able to walk there and see their friends and their neighbors and not necessarily go out to the big boxes. So this really has been a way to help being identity of community, help bring people downtown, help discourage urban sprawl. It is an astonishing program. Here's a list, and I know Venice is alphabetical order, so I know Venice is down there toward the end. But we were first in the land, and I'll talk a little bit about this. I swear I fixed this twice earlier, but it says economic report. This is hot off the presses. You were the first people to see this because I asked the Department of State for the results of this study, and these are the numbers. These numbers are these are 2016 numbers and not yet published, so you're the first to see this. This is the report card for Florida's Main Street program. Nearly $500 million in private investment, nearly $1 billion in private investment for new construction, nearly $500 million more in public investment, 7,300 new businesses, 22,000 new jobs, and 11,474 buildings that have been rehabilitated. I think we should give ourselves all an A+ for this. This is pretty strong. So you're part of that. I don't know how much Venice contributes to this, but you're part of this. And collectively, this is what gives us all identity, and this is something that we really, truly ought to celebrate. So, what I want to kind of do is kind of give you a checklist. If I were your local historic preservation doctor and I were giving you a checkup, these are sort of the things that I would look at. Some of the things that successful communities use and do and tools to be able to do this. Do you have sites on the National Register of Historic Places? I heard how many? 104 sites on the National Register. That's extraordinary. And there's at least one. We're in a district now, the Nolen district. So all the properties in the district that contribute to that's a success. So that's very, very important. Most cities that are successful with this have a historic preservation element of their comprehensive plan. I think I heard you have that. Is that right? Okay, good. So far, so good. A historic ordinance, preservation ordinance. Does Venice have that? Okay, I heard a yeah. I heard a faint yeah. Not sure. I didn't hear an enthusiastic yeah. But they're different. I haven't looked at it. So there are different kinds. Some are more voluntary, and some are more incentivized and rah-rah, and some. I'll just give you an example. Palm Beach, for instance. They have, if it's designated as landmark, you can't tear it down unless some things are established. So, there are different ways to have a historic preservation ordinance. We asked earlier about the tax exemption, and I didn't hear a response. We may need to look at that. That would be a good one. And then next to last, but last I'll mention, is the CLG program. So I heard that we're not a CLG program. Is that right? Not yet. All right, that's good. So I know a little bit about that because I worked with my city, New Smyrna, to become the first CLG, first certified local government program in historic preservation. And Laura, how many CLGs do we have in Florida now? 68. There you go. Very good. Lori's got a deeper voice now. So 68 communities now are CLG, and so that's for what does that mean? What it means is that if you do the package, that you have the historic preservation element, you have the historic preservation ordinance, and you appoint the right kind of people, and I mean by the right kind of people to the board, I mean people who have the professional expertise in dealing with these issues. You know, architects, engineers, contractors, people who understand historic preservation, they're professionals. And so what the CLG program is allows you to save a lot of time in getting your National Register nomination processed and approved. And I won't say it cuts out the middleman, but it really does make it, it really does empower your local government to be able to deal with historic preservation issues. So I would encourage you to, because we now know Venice, and we know what you've got here, and we know, what you've got to protect here, this would be an important thing to pursue. All right, I hear there are 14 in Southwest Florida. So this is not something just for us East Coast or interior folks. This is something for everybody in Florida. And of course, it's a national program, I should point out. It's not just a Florida program. CLG is a national program. I want to just, because I'm from Volusia and I got a couple of these examples, I'll just show you how some of these things work together. We're very proud of what we've been able to do in Volusia, all that we achieved, all those elements in terms of tax exemptions and our CLG program. Both the county and many of our cities are CLGs. And then one of the things that I'm frankly the most proud of is that back in 2000, we did something that to my knowledge no other community in America has done. We approved twin bond issues, two bond issues, one for about $80 million to acquire environmentally sensitive lands, but we also approved a second grant program that's going to generate about $50 million for not only acquiring sites, but also improving sites and doing historic preservation. It's called the ECHO program, and it's environmental, cultural, historic preservation, and outdoor recreation. And as a result of that, we've been able to save some significant historic sites and been able to restore some incredible historic properties and make them available for public use and for the use of the public. And it's really been a great part of the community. So it just shows you how when everything comes together and everybody gets excited about it, you can take that extra step and you can create a pool of funds within the community to be able to really do things right. DeLand, as Betty said, was the first Main Street program in Florida, and it really has been an important part of celebrating its downtown. It's an award winner. Everything happens downtown. There's always something going on. We have national historic districts not only for the downtown but for Stetson. All kinds of things going on. I love this because this is the same view from this is from a 1920s postcard. I'm looking at the cars, I'm guessing early 20s. This is from the Florida Memories Project by the Cars. I'm guessing that's in the 40s. What do you think? Maybe. And then this is something I took last year. Same place. It's timeless. It's timeless. We just switch out the cars, I guess. But, and the paint jobs are a little different. Sky is blue, except in the black and white photo. But, it's something. I think I heard you say that Bruce takes his students out and brings them here and walks them around. I take my students out. We walk around the land, and I show them why the widths of the streets are as wide as they are. Well, because they were laid out before cars. Kids today, they can't imagine what it was like before cars. But why would you need a street that wide before cars? To turn your buggy around, right? Right, turn your buggy around. So these gives these communities a timeless quality. Always something going on, always a parade. This is one of the sites, by the way, you remember the 2000 election, and DeLand was one of those places where we were recounting until they all told us to stop. And you had all of all the TV crews from around the world all lined up looking at the judges counting this hanging chads and all that stuff. By the way, we invented hanging chads in Volusia County. And so Veterans Day came around, and the whole town shut down for the Veterans Day parade. And all these cynical, Washington-based newspaper people couldn't believe the entire town would shut down to watch everybody walk down Main Street and celebrate Veterans Day. And that was cool. I think it made the nightly news probably. But the point was there's always a parade in downtown DeLand. New Smyrna, where I live, first CLG community. We've got historic preservation ordinance, community redevelopment districts, and National Register districts. And we've been about adaptive use. This is my drugstore over here. When I was a kid, it was the movie theater. It still has the luncheonette counter. You can go in and order, lunch at lunchtime. It's just really wonderful. We're full of bed and breakfast. I tell people I live in the bed and breakfast neighborhood. And mixed use. The stores downstairs and people live upstairs. This is the old fire department here. It's retail down below. It's apartments up above. And same here, bookstore down below, and people live up above. Mixed use. It's just, it's a great way to keep people downtown. City Hall was built in the Mint period during the Depression. Always something going on out in front of City Hall. This was the first library in the city. It's now the headquarters for the Community Redevelopment District. And even the Chamber of Commerce is in the act. This is an old Mint building that we restored with echo dollars. And it's celebrated. This is the heart and soul of the economic development of our community. So it's quite a place. So those are a lot of dollars. There are a lot of dollars out there. But really, it's about what we value? Isn't it about our sense of place? And what is that sense of place? Really, it's about what makes us authentic. What separates, Venice from everything else around us in Sarasota County. What makes us different? And so it's those intangibles that really are the value. I don't have to tell you what these places are. You can look at them and know what they are. There's some of the greatest cities that we have in our country. They all have a great sense of place, and historic preservation is an important part of their core. That is kind of part of what they are. It really is a great intangible. So what are the components? By the way, what do they use that's the old courthouse, right? Is that right? No? What is it? There you go, that's right. So a timeless feature, These are all sort of the components: strong environmental setting, distinctive architecture, a sense of history, that you're living history. But it's also a place that you can live in and enjoy. And the identity of the community is reflected in your culture and your arts and literature. These are all the strong tenets of a sense of place. And as we've sort of said all the way through this, you're part of this list. Venice is on this list of some of the innovative places in Florida that have that timeless quality because of the way they were planned and the way that they were laid out. Winter Park is that central Coral Gables, as we said. And here we are. So it was nice coming in here, seeing the John Nolen Plan Historic District. I can tell you that when Bruce Stevenson recruited me to teach in his classroom, that map was the entire back wall of the classroom. It is really hard to teach environmental planning with that map on the wall, because everything is compared to that wall. It's like, what would John Nolen think? So you really do have something special here. We teach in our environmental planning class that he was the father of planning. We talk about the origins of planning. We talk about the components of good planning and that timeless quality. And not only do you have it here, you invented it here, okay? That's something special. That's something that you can't trade for anything else, and you really need, always to kind of hold on to that. And so this is what I would say, this is kind of the bad news. It ain't easy, okay? Today, another 1,000 people moved into Florida, okay? The economy is rebounding. Last year, we had 100 million tourists. That's wonderful. but we also had another 300,000 people that became Floridians. Now, what's the population of Sarasota County? See, this is an interactive group with a... What's the population of Sarasota County? How many? 350. See, we grew another Sarasota County last year. Okay? Does that put it in terms that you can get your arms around? Okay? So you know, you've got to stay on top of this. This is not easy. You have to work to keep the vision. You have to have, as you move forward with your comprehensive plan, you need to keep in mind, what is the vision? How do we keep and control that vision? How do you incentivize preservation as much as we can? How do you make open space? I mean, you look around this plan, there are open spaces that are part of this plan. It's what gives it part of its livability. You know, open spaces are critical to livability in communities. And then overall, celebrate your successes, because you've got something that is very different and that is different here and worth holding on to. So that's my message. You know, I wish I could bottle y'all and sell you around the state. You know, maybe we can. Maybe we ought to come up. What's the Venice plan? You know, but we need to tidy it up. We need to tidy it up so we make sure that what you have here, the essence of this authenticity is something that you keep and preserve as a legacy, you know, for your kids and grandkids and people who haven't yet moved to Venice and, you know, can see how special that you have it here. But maybe this is the last thing to leave with. This is, it's too important to take for granted. You know, you have something special, but you have to fight to keep it, because the tide just keeps coming. And there are things that are always kind of going to work against you, and it's always easy to let go. But y'all came out tonight, you suffered through what I had to say, and my guess is that maybe next time you go to a city commission meeting or a county commission meeting, maybe you'll be a little bit more informed about some of these issues, particularly after you hear Ed and Bruce, and that you will be really good, engaged citizens to move forward to protect ourselves and protect our great sense of place. So with that, I'm done, but I'm sure I'll answer questions.